2024's word of the year should have been dupe. We are a society absolutely obsessed with finding the cheapest replica of a trending item so that everyone can own the same thing. And love it or hate it, dupes have become a major part of the fashion landscape today, sparking opinion pieces and very divisive arguments online whenever a new dupe goes viral. However, that all might be about to change in the future. And I think now is a good time to examine the role of dupes, what they say about us, and whether they're going to last as the fashion industry faces major challenges ahead. Welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. I talk about fashion, sustainability, and online culture. If that sounds good to you, then subscribe to my channel, follow me on all my other social media, and let's just get into it. When I first had the thought for this video, I wanted it to kind of answer the question very clearly about whether dupes are ethical or not, since that is a major talking point anytime they're brought up. And as a sustainable fashion enthusiast, I felt like I would be maybe well placed to answer the question. However, this topic is so nuanced. I started researching and I just fell down a rabbit hole of the internet. So I have tried to make this video as essay-like as possible. We're going to go through the for and against arguments for dupes. We're going to talk about the context of dupes, and we're going to try bundle that up into a conclusion at the end. I think before we go anywhere with this topic, we have to get it right in our heads what we mean when we say dupe. A dupe refers to a product designed to closely resemble a more expensive or well-known item. But, very importantly, a dupe does not copy trademark names, logos, or details of the original item. So it's not an outright copy, and it doesn't breach copyright or intellectual property laws. That's a very important point, and it's going to come up later. We also need to mention the fact that dupes are not new, despite the fact that the word seems to have sprung up in online discourse in the last couple of years only. A dupe is very clever remarketing of the word knockoff, which has been around for ages. And whilst the word knockoff carries some negative connotations that almost meant there was a social stigma around carrying one, a dupe has very positive connotations online. Let's go into a very quick context of the rise of the dupe. Like I said, fashion has always had dupes, or knockoffs as they were called originally, but there's no denying how much they've exploded recently and come into the social conversation. Without getting too much into the economics of it all, the rise of dupe culture is closely linked to the global economy, and I think we need to briefly talk about this. I watch a channel here on YouTube called Gary's Economics, which often goes into how people are reacting to the reality of a declining housing market, an ongoing cost of living crisis, and multiple generations being priced out of classic milestones like being able to get on the property ladder or afford to have children. What this often means is that people are choosing instead to splurge on less expensive goods that are more within their means, like clothing, jewelry, because the sentiment is that we might as well be spending that money since there's almost no use saving. But even that less expensive stuff that we were splurging on has started to become unattainable to many. According to McKinsey, the average price of luxury goods has risen by 15% year on year over the past 3 years. Yet this reality is not reflected on social media. On platforms like TikTok and Instagram, we're bombarded by people casually flaunting their luxury items, which makes it feel like everyone else can afford these luxury goods. Gen Z is the generation most likely to purchase a dupe. We're also the most chronically online generation, most at risk of being influenced by that wealthy aesthetic that's being pushed online right now. And there's a definite correlation between that context and our love of dupes. At the same time as we're seeing all this wealth and high status being pushed online, we're also seeing a general sentiment growing in many people that luxury fashion is no longer luxury. Once revered brands are being dragged into similar labor scandals that we condemn fast fashion brands for. Videos are surfacing online showing luxury items that are bad quality even to the naked eye, but we'll come back to that. And people are reacting very badly to the price surges of these luxury products, sanctioned by brands intent on not addressing any of these issues. So to recap on some of that important context before we move on, more and more people are financially struggling. There's a growing inequality about who can afford luxury and a growing distrust that that luxury is worth it. And people still feel pressure to look the part, even if they can't actually easily afford luxury items thanks to trending aesthetics on social media. Enter the rise of dupes. I think we need to talk about this cottage industry building around dupes that can no longer be ignored. One piece of history I haven't gone into a lot yet is that finding a lookalike product for less is something fashion magazines have been doing with celebrity outfits for ages and was very culturally acceptable, since in that case it was literally democratizing fashion from A-list celebrities to the general public. But the idea of a couple of fashion magazines finding similar products to something a celeb has worn on the red carpet is a far different scale to sharing this on a platform like TikTok, literally designed to perpetuate trend culture. And sharing a dupe on here will almost guarantee an instant trend and a knock-on effect of people searching for an even cheaper dupe of your dupe from an even less reputable site, if only to chase the clout of people flocking to their video instead. We absolutely have to acknowledge the TikTok of it all, because in my opinion, TikTok is one of the biggest reasons dupe culture has got as out of hand as it is now. The platform itself has pivoted to a glorified shopping platform that pushes its own version of dupes from dropshipping disreputable sites. It has also done a lot of the heavy lifting to make dupes socially acceptable to others. Like I said, TikTok was the one that rebranded knockoff into dupe and also glamorized the practice into a display of your financial prowess and internet sleuthing skills to share with millions of people. And not only that, the TikTok dupe machine has gotten so out of control that people are comfortable basing their entire internet personalities off being able to find the best dupe, link it in their Amazon storefront, and earn commission off people buying it from them. Approximately a third of US adults have knowingly purchased a dupe, with the majority skewing towards younger, lower income, and very online, which sounds like very similar demographics to a large portion of TikTok. One of the things I mentioned in the context part of the video is that social media has started to lean towards a very expensive aesthetic. And specifically what I meant by that was the fact that TikTok for a while has been pushing the narrative of capsule wardrobes, quiet luxury, and old money as the current socially acceptable aesthetics. And those have definitely influenced our obsession with cosplaying wealth. Our feeds are absolutely bombarded by minimalistic, rich-looking clothing that becomes aspirational and coveted until we see the price, at which point we're so far invested that you're almost guaranteed to look for a dupe online to get this look without the price tag. All of these economic and social factors have led us to the point where dupes have completely eclipsed being a trend now online. It is an industry in its own right, with brands being forced to sit up and take notice because of the market potential dupes present to them and their bottom lines. One of the best examples of this is the brand Quince. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. I hadn't before I started scripting this video, but Quince is a brand whose entire marketing revolves around duping popular products. Their same but cheaper pitch has brought its annual sales to $300 million last year. And interestingly enough, a big reason for that is because they don't market their items as too cheap. Their success is largely attributed to the fact that they are courting mostly millennial customers who want a cheap item but have been burned one too many times by shopping from the likes of Amazon. As The Cut put it, they aspire to a tastefully understated beige lifestyle of safe, classic status symbols without the logo and markups that typically accompany them. They are the kind of shoppers who can afford better than Shein and Amazon, but are less willing to spend hundreds of dollars on luxury when the future seems so uncertain. And that middle ground is where Quince is winning. What they're offering is similar quality materials to luxury items with lower price tags and without the social stigma of shopping at Shein. And clearly that's working out for them. But is it ethical? That's what we're going to go into now, because the ethics of dupes is a very bipartisan topic and very, very nuanced. So I'm going to try to do a balanced argument for and against them and let you guys make up your own mind. Before I started filming this video, I asked on my Instagram stories, is it ever acceptable to buy a dupe? And side note, if you're not following me on there, then you're definitely missing out on the polls and the call out questions I do, which get featured on these videos. So you should definitely go follow me if you aren't already. The results are quite mixed. The biggest category was I sometimes do, I sometimes don't, kind of showing to me that people sometimes might feel a little bit conflicted about buying them, but might think that in some cases it's a good idea. And the second highest category was no, dupes are unethical or bad quality. Although it's worth noting that my audience definitely skews towards the environmentally conscious because I attract cool people who care about the environment. So maybe that influenced the poll a little bit. But let's go into the defense of dupes and the reasons why they can be ethical. Number one, fashion has always had copying and referencing. Unless a designer comes out with something that is completely new and innovative, which, let's face it, never really happens, all fashion is a reference to something that came before. And we could make the case that dupes are simply exposing that fact to the masses. However, there is a definitely important difference between referencing, duping, and straight up copying someone. An example is with the Miu Miu raffia bag, which was definitely a trending item recently. Now this bag was $2,300. Would a lot of people pay that? I don't think so. Did Miu Miu create the design of the raffia bag? I don't think so. Therefore, this isn't really an original design that should be only associated with the Miu Miu brand and is kind of fair use for other brands to make similar styles. The law feels the same, and there's only been a handful of successful times where a brand has sued for duping. One of those examples is when Steve Madden created a near identical version of the Garni buckle belt ballet flats. Garni sued Steve Madden and argued in their case that their design was original enough for copyright protection. And the court agreed and ruled in their favour, determining that the shoe's unique combination of elements reflected sufficient creativity to be protected under the copyright law. However, like I mentioned, this is a very unusual case, and normally a brand will not get away with suing for a dupe. The second argument pro-dupe is that it is a symptom of a wider issue, not the root problem. That wider issue being the societal push to overconsume and the normalization of the rapidly increasing trend cycle. This interview with fashion editor Harling Ross puts it into better words. As they explain, we're trained to want so many things and acquire them quickly. So as long as these behaviors continue to play out, dupes will be here to stay. Dupe culture is an inevitable byproduct of luxury and how we react with it. The third argument for dupes is that sometimes, with a heavy asterisk over the sometimes, they're better for the consumer. Our general agreement when purchasing a dupe is the item we're going to receive is going to be worse quality or worse design than the original. One example I want to point to is the Rose jelly sandals and the subsequent Amazon dupes. Now, did the Row invent jelly sandals? No, but they are the reason why the jelly sandal aesthetic has been more coveted recently. And despite this fact, and despite the fact that some people have been willing to buy from the Row because they want their version of jelly sandal, people are also saying that the Amazon dupe modeled off the Row are better quality. And that's something to pay attention to. Does this mean I'm advocating that you go shop on Amazon, a unethical brand known for pushing fast fashion? Absolutely not. But do I think we need to be paying attention to the longevity of an item when we're talking about the sustainability of items? Definitely yes. I think this is an especially important argument given the fact that there is so much conversation right now about how luxury products are declining in quality. The fourth argument is that dupe culture is not necessarily bad for the fashion brands whose designs are being ripped off. Some brands are creating successful marketing campaigns and building brand loyalty by playing up the dupe angle. Two examples I can think of is Lululemon hosting a dupe swap where customers could trade their knockoff leggings for a pair of the real version, with the brand trusting that this would highlight the unmatched quality of their items. And two is Charlotte Tilbury releasing a campaign via TikTok video showing their Hollywood faultless filter product in a photocopier, which then displayed messages like "error, legends cannot be copied." Both of these campaigns were very successful for the brands. And the fifth and final argument for dupes is that people are actually now reverse duping, which is kind of cool. Apparently there are people who are finding cute designs they want to buy from Shein and Temu and those kind of sites, but instead of shopping from those platforms that have a reputation of being bad quality, they're instead looking for a more expensive alternative, which should in theory last longer. Okay, I think that was all my main arguments for why dupes aren't that bad. If I've missed some out, then feel free to comment them below. But I think we need to go into the critique of dupes. Starting with the argument that cheaper products normally mean that something fishy is going on with the brand you're buying them from, even if the brand is promising quality like Quince. And speaking of that brand, part of their pricing strategy is pushing suppliers to go as low as possible in order to maintain that same but cheaper slogan that the brand pushes. I think that even though one of the successes of Quince has been attributed to the fact that people want a more ethical alternative to shopping from Shein, those shoppers have to be living in a little bit of willful ignorance when it comes to why their items can be priced so much cheaper than the luxury that they're duping. When something is priced lower than something else, we have to know that we're giving up something. And if that's not quality or design, like Quince promises it isn't, then it has to be in supply chain and who's getting paid for this work. As one of my subscribers put it, the discourse around dupes online often revolves around getting luxury looks for cheap, completely sidestepping the reality of fast fashion's exploitative supply chains. Who is paying for our constant shopping of today's must-have items? The issue with believing we all deserve everything and we deserve it for as cheap as possible is that it's fueling overconsumption. Higher prices somewhat guarantee that the item will be treasured longer. And although that comment made several good points, I think the overarching message of if we're not the ones paying more for a product than someone else is rings true. Okay, second point, the made in the same factory argument that a lot of people rely on when talking about why they bought a luxury dupe does not guarantee anything. This argument was introduced to me when I was reading a Vice article on the ethics of dupes. And they were the ones to pick up on the fact that this is often a common argument when people say that they've duped luxury products, that because it's coming from the same factory, it's just the brand's markup that you're paying the difference for. I immediately had thoughts on this, but I think this tweet from Wirkin just sums it up so much better. Reminder that made in the same factory does not mean made with the same materials, made with the same finishing designs, made with the same patterns and fit. Just because a factory is capable of making high quality doesn't mean everything it makes is of high quality. My third argument against, which I think is maybe the most important, is that dupes are a symbol of overconsumption. They also arguably speed up the trend cycle and continue to erode our understanding of what fashion truly should cost. Let's break this down. Dupes are literally a direct result of trends. If an item is not popular enough, then no one is going to want to copy it and make a cheaper version. As a substack I was reading put it so well, the rapid accessibility of cheap imitations lowers the social capital of original designs, making them feel less special and pushing the industry to move on to the next must-have item even faster. And as for that last point I made about dupes being partly responsible for eroding our understanding of what fashion should actually cost, I want to talk about the expensive versus costly debate. From an interview with Hermès's artistic director came this quote.
Hermès is very costly. It's not expensive, it's costly.
What's the difference?
The cost is the actual price of making an object properly with the required level of attention so that you have an object of quality. Expensive is a product which is not delivering what it's supposed to deliver, but you've paid quite a large amount of money for it and then it betrays you. That's expensive.
Often we use the word costly and expensive interchangeably, but as Pierre Damas says, these two things actually mean different things. And I think this rapid spiraling towards dupes is just further eroding our understanding that clothing should not be so cheap, and goes back to that other point about if we're not the ones paying the true cost of clothing, then someone else is.
I'm editing right now, but I realised I forgot to make an important point, which is that even though I said that fashion is often referential and often brands are not inventing their own designs, there is definitely a case for big brands stealing from small brands and capitalising off of those brands' time, money and labour in order to literally rip off their designs, or like even make a very close dupe of them that probably borders on counterfeiting, but because the brand is so small they can't take them to court like Garni did. Maybe this was just too obvious a point, I forgot to put it in the first time, but I wanted to include it.
Another mark against dupes is that they have an almost guaranteed short lifespan. There is no resale market on a fake luxury item, barring of course the very few examples of a counterfeit that is so good that it could fake an expert. Which means that instead of having a luxury product that we can then sell on to other people and which retains or even gains in value, we are just left with a duped luxury item which is basically just destined to landfill because no one wants a fake of a luxury. The fifth reason against dupes is that it is exacerbating an issue that already exists in fashion. I've already kind of mentioned this, but fashion is basically splitting down the middle, either going towards luxury consumers or cheap consumers, meaning that middle businesses are going out of business. If that happens, then we as consumers are either left with unattainably high luxury products or bad quality dupes, which is an issue we're already struggling with. I think with all that being said, it might be constructive to talk about what makes a good and a bad dupe, because I do believe that all of those for and all of those against arguments can be true at the same time, and maybe there isn't an exact ethical answer to this situation. Maybe the ethics lies in what we choose to dupe and what we choose to not dupe. So, some of the tips from you guys and from me as to what makes a good dupe. By popular consensus, a dupe can be good if it rips off a big business but not a small one. I'm not sure I 100% agree with this sentiment.
I'm back because I feel like I didn't explain properly why I do and don't agree with this take. I do agree with this logic when it's applied to big brands like Skims, like Lululemon, that are definitely unethical and like who cares if their designs are ripped off because they're not helping the planet at all. But I feel like this argument has come to be applied to other brands which aren't as unethical but are still considered bigger brands, so people don't care that they're ripping off. And my main kind of example that I'm thinking of is the brand Garni, which I believe is doing a lot towards sustainability, and I think people should be supporting because of that. And in their case, and in cases of brands like that, I think we should be buying the main thing and not allowing people to dupe them with less ethical products, even though the original products are expensive.
I think a tip I definitely agree with is that if you find something online from a ethically dubious site like Shein and you like the design, then trying to find a more sustainable version of that in better quality materials and from a brand that has better principles is a great thing. And my last tip, which kind of supersedes a lot of arguments online, because I do think it does come down to how long we keep our clothes, that is a true measure of sustainability, is that if you find a dupe that is just better quality than the original item, that means that you are going to be able to wear it longer and keep it longer in your wardrobe, then I think 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a good dupe. This is kind of an argument for going for a luxury brand if you can guarantee the quality, because not only is it more likely that they have quality, but because you've invested more money in it, you might treasure it more and therefore it might last longer just by that definition anyway. And I want to quickly reference the Wirkin debate here, because I think the Wirkin Birkin situation is a really good example of when buying a dupe isn't worth it. Before I get crucified for this take, I'm just going to point you to Abby Cox's video called When is a Bag Worth $12,000? I highly recommend watching the entirety of it. It is an amazing breakdown of the true cost of fashion and why the price point of a Birkin is acceptable for what they're offering. But it basically boils down to the fact that although a Birkin is seen as a status symbol in our society, the bag itself is way more than that. And it's only the way we've framed this narrative in society that is causing such discord between people believing whether it is or isn't worth the price tag. If we ignore all of that and focus on the brand's slow fashion mindset, its craftsmanship, its dedication to its workers, then the price tag suddenly does not seem that much. But like I said, you need to watch the video because it's so good. Let's quickly talk about what makes a bad dupe. If you do want to purchase an item but you're concerned over the quality of it, then watch out if the item is made from luxury materials. In Amy Odell's Substack post, she points out the fact that in the case of the Row Jelly sandals, arguably the most popular dupe of 2024, the plastic fabric helped their ability to be ripped off by other brands and replicated so successfully that some people said they were better quality than than the originals. Amy says that replicating something like luxury leather, for example, is much more difficult than polyester. I think the only other thing you need to think about is that a bad dupe will always be one that you have bought simply because you can, or because you're trying to fit in with what you're seeing online, rather than buying something because you love it, you think the style is right for you, and this is the way you can afford to bring that style into your wardrobe, or this is the way you can afford to reference a designer you love, whose price tag is out of your reach otherwise. The rose jelly sandals are made from polyester. The only luxury from that item is going to be from the perceived value you put on it for liking that design or liking that designer. And with that, I feel like we've come to the end of the conversation around dupes. I think we reached peak dupe in 2024, in my opinion. And I think, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this video, dupes are potentially under threat and maybe on the way out. I think the success of dupes has been its own downfall, and that because replicating wealthy status symbols has become so easy, wealth is now going to be redefined as something else that is less attainable. I could see this being luxury brands actually coming back around to focus on being luxury, on their quality materials and their craftsmanships, because at this point that is the only thing that can set them apart from the Sheins of the world. I could also see this being people no longer want to lean into the culture of duping, instead go into the way of finding completely unique pieces that they don't share the origin of online, or customizing their wardrobe so it's not easily replicable, and therefore having a kind of like luxury unattainability that way. And funny enough, after I finished scripting this video, I saw a post online from Vogue Business called "Is Gatekeeping Cool Again?", which was talking about some of these sentiments and the fact that influencers and brands are rethinking their approaches to exclusivity. Not to mention, of course, apart from all these societal changes we're seeing and this growing fatigue with dupes, the political situation is putting our actual access to these products at risk. The trade war between the US and China might mean that the de minimis loophole is closed, which will affect brands relying on their low costs to attract customers, just like Shein, but also brands like Quince. Of course, we also have that looming threat of the TikTok ban, which seems to have been put on hold now, but might crop up again in the future. And since TikTok is such a raging machine for dupes, I think this will majorly impact their popularity if the platform is shut down. So yeah, I feel like we've just done the biggest deep dive into dupe culture ever. It feels like I waffled on for a while, but I hope it was entertaining and informative and sparked some conversations in the comments below about whether dupes are ethical or not, and what you think the future of them will be as like the world continues to carry on the way it does. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much if you've reached this point in the video. I appreciate you for sticking with me. Please make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and if you want to watch another video, then YouTube thinks you'll like the one on the screen now. But yeah, have a lovely day. Bye.